Ethan Hale woke before the sun, the way he always did when rain was expected. Not because the rain worried him, but because the land spoke differently when the air grew heavy. The birds went quiet first. Then the wind shifted, brushing the tall grass in slow, deliberate strokes, like fingers testing fabric. He stood on the porch with a mug of coffee cooling in his hands, eyes fixed on the shallow valley where his dam rested. It wasn't much to look at. A gentle curve of earth reinforced with stone, grass growing thick along its spine, water resting behind it like a held breath. To anyone passing by, it looked almost accidental, as if the land itself had decided to pause there. But Ethan knew better. He had built it 12 years earlier, after the rain that nearly took everything. Back then, the valley had no houses, no paved roads, no decorative mailboxes lined up in neat rows. Just raw land and a runoff channel that turned violent when storms came too fast. The county engineer had stood beside him during the inspection, boots sinking into mud. "You're not stopping the water," the man had said. "You're teaching it patience." Ethan liked that. He'd taught the water well. Below his property, life had grown comfortable. Families moved in. Streets were named. Lawns were measured. And eventually, a sign went up at the entrance to the neighborhood. Willow Ridge Community Association. Ethan never joined. No one asked him to. At first. The first letter. The envelope waited in his mailbox when he returned from checking the spillway. Clean. White. Official. He recognized the logo immediately, 2 overlapping houses inside a green circle. Inside, the letter was polite, almost friendly. "Dear property owner, as part of our ongoing efforts to ensure safety and uniform standards within the Willow Ridge area, we are conducting a routine review of nearby structures that may influence shared environmental conditions." Ethan folded the letter once, then twice. Routine review. Shared conditions. He set it on the kitchen table beside older papers, permits, surveys, inspection notes, documents that had lived there quietly for years. "They'll figure it out," he said to no one. And for a while it seemed like they might. Rain remembered. That night, rain arrived softly. Water slid down the hills and gathered behind the dam, spreading out, slowing down. The spillway released it in careful increments, exactly as designed. Below, the neighborhood slept. Years earlier, before the dam existed, a storm like this would have flooded the lower roads. Basements would have filled. People would have blamed bad luck. Now they blamed nothing at all. Ethan walked the length of the dam with a flashlight, boots sinking slightly into damp earth. He pressed his palm against the stone, feeling the steady vibration of water held in check. "You're doing fine," he murmured. The water answered by staying where it was. The second letter. The second letter arrived 3 weeks later. This one mentioned fees. Ethan read it twice, slower this time. "Our records indicate that your property falls within a recently updated environmental management boundary." Updated. Boundary. The word sat wrong with him. He drove into town the next morning and visited the county office. A young clerk searched his name, then frowned. "Your property isn't listed under any HOA jurisdiction," she said. "That's what I thought." She hesitated. But there was a filing. A revised map. "It's recent." Ethan thanked her and left. That evening, rain clouds stacked low again, darker this time. HOA meeting. First appearance. The Willow Ridge meeting room was warm and brightly lit, with folding chairs arranged in tidy rows. Ethan sat in the back. At the front, the board members spoke in practiced rhythms. Consistency. Liability. Community standards. When Ethan raised his hand, the chairwoman nodded with a polite smile. "Yes, sir? My name is Ethan Hale," he said evenly. "The dam you're discussing is on my land. It was built legally, inspected, and maintained privately. It doesn't belong to the HOA." A man beside the chairwoman leaned forward. "It affects the HOA." Ethan met his gaze. "It protects it." Murmurs moved through the room. The chairwoman's smile didn't change. "We appreciate your perspective. This matter will be reviewed." Ethan sat back down. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. The third letter. The third letter came certified. This one listed amounts, not small ones. Backdated assessments, administrative penalties, compliance fees. Ethan's jaw tightened as he read. He called the number at the bottom of the page. After 3 transfers, a calm voice answered. Willow Ridge Compliance Office. These fees, Ethan said. They're a mistake. A pause. Papers shuffled. Our records indicate otherwise. My land predates your association. Yes, but influence is not ownership, the voice replied smoothly. The call ended without resolution. Rain began an hour later. Harder this time. Memory. The storm before everything. As water pooled behind the dam, Ethan remembered the night that had convinced him to build it. Wind screaming. Rain falling sideways. The runoff channel tearing itself deeper, faster, angrier. He remembered standing in ankle-deep water, watching the land fail because no one had given it time. After that storm, he never trusted luck again. The fourth letter. The fourth letter arrived with heavier paper. Bold text. Final notice. Ethan didn't sit down to read it. Failure to resolve outstanding compliance issues may result in enforced remediation. Remediation. He folded the letter carefully and placed it beside the others. Outside, the land waited. So did the water. The rain eased by morning, but the ground stayed heavy. Ethan walked the property line slowly, boots pressing shallow prints into damp soil. From the ridge, he could see Willow Ridge stretching below him, rows of houses aligned like careful thoughts, streets curving politely around landscaped islands. Nothing looked threatened. Nothing ever did, until it was. He stopped at the survey marker near the tree line, a small metal stake half buried in earth. It hadn't been there before. He crouched, brushed away dirt, and frowned. Someone had been measuring. The lawyer. The lawyer's office smelled faintly of old paper and lemon cleaner. Marianne Kessler listened without interrupting, fingers steepled beneath her chin as Ethan laid the letters across her desk. She didn't react when she saw the totals. That worried him. These fees, Ethan said, keeping his voice even. They don't apply to me. Marianne nodded slowly. I agree. Then why do they sound so certain? Because certainty isn't about truth, she replied. It's about documentation. She pulled up a map on her screen, zooming in. Willow Ridge filed an amended boundary last year, she said. They didn't absorb your land. They expanded what they call an environmental influence zone. Ethan leaned forward. That's not ownership. No, Marianne said. But it's leverage. She looked at him carefully. Your dam works. That's the problem. Ethan frowned. How could that be a problem? Because it's something they didn't approve, she said. And it protects people without asking permission. HOA board. Closed session. The HOA board sat around a polished table, papers spread neatly before them. We've followed procedure, the treasurer said. And the fees are valid, added another. The chairwoman tapped her pen once. He believes the dam gives him moral standing. A man at the far end scoffed. Morality doesn't appear in our bylaws. The chairwoman smiled thinly. No. Compliance does. She looked down at the final item on the agenda. Escalation. Pressure builds. The notices came weekly now, each one sharper than the last. Deadlines shortened. Penalties increased. Ethan responded to every letter with calm documentation, permits, photos, inspection records, hydrology reports. The responses he received were identical. This matter has already been resolved by board review. Marianne warned him during one meeting. They're building a timeline, she said. Not to negotiate. To justify action. What kind of action? She hesitated. Enforced remediation. Ethan said nothing. That night, rain returned. Harder, longer, heavier. The second HOA meeting. This time, the room felt colder. The board allowed Ethan to speak, but their attention was elsewhere. I am not refusing cooperation, Ethan said. I am refusing misrepresentation. The chairwoman folded her hands. Your structure presents liability. It has prevented damage for years. Without authorization. A resident raised her hand. Wait, she said. That dam Doesn't it help with flooding? The chairwoman didn't look at her. That's not the issue. Ethan felt something tighten in his chest. It should be, he said quietly. Weather reports. Meteorologists began using words like unusual and persistent. Upstream rainfall increased. Runoff channels filled faster than expected. Ethan monitored levels daily, adjusting spillways, clearing debris. He emailed the HOA twice, warning them. No response. The vote. Marianne called him just before dusk.
They voted, she said.
Ethan closed his eyes. Unanimous? Yes. He waited. They've authorized removal of the dam if fees remain unpaid. Silence stretched between them. Can they do that? He asked. They believe they can, Marianne said carefully. And belief backed by paperwork can be very loud. Ethan looked out at the land. How long? 30 days. Night on the dam. That night, Ethan walked the length of the dam again. The water behind it was higher now, darker, pressing gently but insistently against earth and stone. You're not the problem, he said softly. The wind carried his words away. Below, porch lights flickered on across Willow Ridge. Above, clouds thickened into something slow and serious. End of Part 2, cliffhanger. 30 days. Rain in the forecast. Paper moving faster than water ever could. And a decision already made, whether the land agreed or not. The notice arrived at dawn. Ethan found it taped neatly to his gate, protected from the morning dew by a clear plastic sleeve. The paper inside was stiff, formal, unmistakable. Notice of enforced remediation.
No greeting. No explanation.
Just authority, printed in black. He didn't tear it down. He read it once, then left it where it was and walked back toward the house. The land was quiet in that heavy way it got before rain, even though the sky was clear. The air felt stretched, like something held too tightly for too long. The call that changed nothing. Marianne answered on the second ring. They're coming today, Ethan said. There was a pause. He could hear her breathing. Did they give a time?
No.
They're within their claimed authority window, she said carefully. If you obstruct. I know, she sighed. I'm filing an emergency injunction. It won't move fast enough. Ethan looked out toward the dam. Then this is it. I'm sorry, she said and meant it. Arrival. The trucks came just after 8. 2 white utility vehicles. 1 flatbed. 1 excavator. They moved slowly, deliberately, like they were entering sacred ground without quite believing it was sacred. Ethan stood near the dam as the men climbed out. A supervisor approached, helmet under his arm. Mr. Hale? Yes. We're authorized to proceed. Ethan nodded. I know. The man hesitated. You want to look over the paperwork? I've seen enough paper, Ethan replied. The supervisor glanced back at the excavator, then lowered his voice. For what it's worth, this isn't personal. Ethan almost smiled. Almost. The first cut. The excavator's engine roared to life, breaking the morning stillness. Metal met earth. The dam resisted at first. The packed soil held, stone pressing back against the machine's force. But machines were patient in a way people often weren't. With each careful movement, the structure weakened. Water began to seep through the new fractures, thin threads at first, then steady trickles. Ethan felt it in his chest, like a slow exhale he hadn't agreed to release. A worker looked away. Another kept his eyes fixed on the controls. No one spoke.
HOA oversight.
A sedan pulled up near the property line. The chairwoman stepped out, clipboard in hand. She didn't approach Ethan.
She observed.
When the supervisor walked over to her, their conversation was brief. All within scope, he said. She nodded. Document everything. Ethan watched her from a distance, her shoes never touching the mud. Memory, building the dam. As the excavator worked, Ethan's mind returned to the day the dam was finished. The county engineer had walked its length slowly, boots sinking slightly. Water respects this, the man had said. You did good work. Ethan remembered feeling something close to pride then. Now, that pride felt like a memory someone else owned. Collapse. By noon, the dam no longer resembled itself. What had once been a curve was now a broken line. The excavator made one final pass. The earth gave way. Water surged forward, not violently, but decisively. It rushed through the channel as if relieved to be unrestrained. Ethan took an involuntary step back. The supervisor raised a hand. Clear. The last of the structure dissolved into mud and motion. The dam was gone. Aftermath. The workers shut down the machines. One approached Ethan. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Ethan nodded. "I know." The chairwoman signed the final form and left without a word. Silence returned, but it was different now. Empty. The first rain without it. The rain began 2 days later. Light at first. Ethan watched the channel fill faster than it ever had before. Without the dam, there was no pause.
No patience.
Water moved downhill with purpose. He documented everything, timestamps, photos, measurements. He sent the HOA an email. No response. Nightfall. That night, Ethan stood at the edge of the channel with a flashlight. The beam cut across rushing water, catching foam and debris. "This didn't have to happen," he said aloud. The water did not answer. It kept moving. End of Part 3, cliffhanger. By morning, the rain was heavier. By afternoon, the channel was full. And below, in Willow Ridge, something began to change, quietly at first, the way disasters often do. The rain no longer sounded like rain. It sounded like pressure. Not the sharp drumming of a passing storm, but the continuous weight of something that had settled in and decided to stay. By the third day, the ground could take no more. It gave back what it had been forced to hold. Ethan watched from his porch as the channel swelled, water racing downhill with a speed he had only seen once before, years ago, before the dam existed. Before anyone listened.
Downstream.
At Willow Ridge, the first call came just after dawn. "Water's coming in through the basement wall," a resident said, voice shaking. Another followed minutes later. Then another. The HOA emergency line lit up. Inside the community center, folding chairs were pushed aside as board members gathered in haste. Papers were spread across the table without order. Coffee sat untouched. "This doesn't make sense," the treasurer said. "Our drainage plan accounted for." "For what?" someone snapped. "For rain behaving politely?" The chairwoman said nothing. She stared at the window as rain streaked down the glass in uneven lines. The channel without a pause. Upstream, Ethan walked the length of the runoff channel, careful with each step. Water rushed past his boots, fast but clean. The land on his side held firm, just as it always had when allowed to work the way it was shaped to. He knelt, checking soil saturation. "Too fast," he murmured. "You're moving too fast." The water did not slow. It couldn't. Emergency meeting. The HOA meeting that afternoon was nothing like the others.
No poliche da agenda.
No measured tone. Residents spoke over one another. "My garage is flooded. The street's gone. We never had this problem before." A man near the back raised his voice. "We did. Years ago. Before the dam." The room stilled. The chairwoman finally spoke. "That structure was unauthorized." A woman stood. "It worked." Murmurs spread, uneasy and growing. Realization. Engineers arrived by evening. They walked the channel, took measurements, exchanged looks. One of them turned to the chairwoman. "Was there a retention structure upstream?" he asked. She hesitated. Just a moment too long. "Yes," she said. "And it was removed?" "Yes." The engineer closed his notebook slowly. "Then this isn't surprising." Ethan's silence. Ethan did not call anyone. He did not send messages or warnings. He stood at the edge of his land and watched as emergency lights flickered below, reflected in moving water. A neighbor from Willow Ridge drove up to his gate and got out. "You knew," the man said, not accusing, just tired. Ethan nodded once. "I told them." The man exhaled shakily. "I wish they'd listened." "So do I," Ethan said. The board unravels. Inside the community center, voices rose. "We should have waited. You pushed it. This is on all of us." The chairwoman sat down heavily. "No," she said quietly. This is on procedure. No one argued. Official word. By nightfall, authorities issued a statement. Flooding was exacerbated by altered upstream water control. No names were mentioned. Facts rarely needed them. Water moves through. The rain eased at last. But the water kept moving, through homes, through streets, through assumptions that had once felt solid. Ethan watched as the channel began to lower, slowly returning to something manageable. It would take time for the land to heal. Time the neighborhood no longer had. End of Part 4, Cliffhanger. When the sun finally broke through the clouds, it revealed what the water had taken and what it had left behind. And the question no one wanted to ask yet began to settle over Willow Ridge. What happens after the water leaves? The water did not leave all at once. It never did. It receded slowly, reluctantly, as if taking one last look at everything it had touched. What remained was not destruction in the dramatic sense, but displacement. Furniture stacked on sidewalks. Carpets hanging over railings. Silence where routine once lived. Ethan walked the edge of his land in the early morning light, boots sinking into soft earth. The channel was lower now, calmer, though still restless. It would take weeks before it fully trusted the ground again. So would the people. Inspection. The county inspectors arrived mid-morning. They were methodical, quiet, careful not to speculate aloud. One of them knelt near the channel, measuring soil compaction. This land held, he said. Ethan nodded. It always did. Another inspector adjusted her glasses. What changed upstream? Ethan said nothing at first. Then evenly, what was removed? They wrote that down. Willow Ridge after. At Willow Ridge, the HOA sign still stood, but it leaned now, one post loosened by saturated ground. Residents moved through the streets without direction. No meetings were scheduled. No emails sent. The community center doors were locked. Inside, boxes of unsent notices sat stacked on tables. Procedure had run out of words. The board. The chairwoman sat alone in her car in the empty parking lot, hands resting on the steering wheel. She hadn't slept. The bylaws folder lay open on the passenger seat, pages wrinkled from moisture. She closed it. There would be no more meetings. The resignations were filed the same day, quietly, without statements. No one asked for explanations. Conversation at the gate. A woman approached Ethan's gate one afternoon. She hesitated before speaking. We lost the basement, she said. But we're okay.
I'm glad, Ethan replied.
She looked at the channel. That dam, it wasn't the enemy, was it? Ethan shook his head.
No.
It was the pause. The report. The official report arrived 2 weeks later. It was factual, precise, careful. The removal of a water retention structure had significantly increased flood severity downstream. No individual fault assigned. No recommendations offered beyond future caution. Ethan read it once, then placed it with the others. Rebuilding quietly. Ethan applied for permits. This time, everything was approved. He rebuilt, not the same dam, but a smaller one. Lower. Documented. Visible. It slowed the water again. Taught it patience. Letting go. Months later, Ethan sold the lower portion of his land.
Kept the ridge. Kept the channel.
Before finalizing the sale, he filed a single statement with the county. Optional, unofficial. Water does not need control. It needs understanding. No one argued with it. Rain again. The rain returned in late autumn. Steady.
Familiar.
Ethan stood on his porch as water gathered and slowed, just as it should. Below, Willow Ridge remained quiet.
Prepared.
Final reflection. Ethan thought of all the meetings that had ended with votes. All the decisions made, without listening. All the power placed in paper instead of place. The land remembered differently. Final line. Nature never chose sides. It simply followed the path people cleared for it.